Righty-yo, howdy y'all. I'm excited to be back. Zach here doing some course prep for my Gatsby with WordPress Headless CMS course. And what I'm going to do is basically just walk through a lot of the stuff I do researching and prepping to do this course. So last time we finished off with the basic Gatsby official tutorial part 0, which was prepping, in part 1, which was building our first Gatsby thing. And we launched our first site. We got it up here on Surge, and it's got a contact page, a home page showing an image from Upsplash. So that's pretty cool. And where we left off was with about to do styling. So what we're going to do is get into the styling today. And I've kind of looked through these and played with Gatsby a little bit, but I'm no expert yet. So kind of learning as we all go along here, and this should hopefully be pretty cool and fun together. Okay, let me get this all adjusted here. Cool. So, styling in Gatsby. What's in this one? You're going to explore more options for styling, dive into React component styling, global styles. So everything has a global style, so it's often nice to have one standard CSS or Sass file that can be applied to everything. And then we'll get into component styling too. So what it's going to suggest is we're going to create a global CSS file, but it wants us to start a new site. So I'm going to I'm going to cd out of here, so cd //, and now I can type what they suggest. And the nice thing about these is we could just copy and paste this right in. Remember, npx is going to run some processes. The Gatsby command tells us that we've got, well, Gatsby is just accessing Gatsby, and then new means to set up a new Gatsby site, the name of the site or directory that we want, and then the actual URL where it could get all the files to start from. And then it's going to tell us to cd into that directory. So let's check that it got all done. Looks mostly a few warnings, but looks good. So let's go ahead and cd into our tutorial. And remember, you could hit tab on your keyboard too. Oh, we're already in there because the cd was part of the command I copied, so it just executed that. Okay, cool. So now we've got a new site based on the Gatsby Hello World, and if we come in here, we should see the Hello World that we saw before. All right, so it wants us to create a new CSS file. It wants us to cd into the source folder. So now it's going to have us using the command line to do some things. I could manually just make these folders, but let's just go ahead and do it all from the command line. It's a good practice. So mkdir would be the command for making the directory, and it's going to, hold on. Let's try that again. mkdir styles, that will make us a folder here called styles, which is good. And now we want to move into that styles folder, again using the tab. And touch will give us the ability to create a file of any kind, and we could just say whatever extension we want, and now we've got this new styles global.css file. Cool, so now we should have a structure just like that. We do define some styles, so HTML background color lavender blush. What a lovely color. Just copy and paste that in. Include the style sheet in the Gatsby browser. So we haven't dug around with this too much, but we've got to create. We'll go back, and now we're back in our root directory. So if we were to list out what we have here, this is our root directory here, and it wants us to create a Gatsby browser. This is going to be a configuration file of sorts. Oh, let's see. It tells us what is Gatsby. Don't worry about this. For now, it's one of a handful of special files that Gatsby looks for, and its naming is important. So anybody in the WordPress space knows the importance of naming files certain ways to have them pop up. And if you want to explore it more, let's just take a moment. Browser APIs. So these are all, let's see, implement any of these APIs. So these are APIs that are built into Gatsby, and we could hook into and configure and work with them from this file. So guessing that something from there is something that we're going to touch. So it looks like it just wants us to import our styles. So let's come into that file. Here we go. and import them. Now notice, because we are running on Node, because all of this is going to be compiled that Gatsby is doing and then spit out our static site, we could actually run require. I like to use import because a lot of stuff I do is front end, and I like that, but require will work there. Now let's go ahead and boot it up. So we're in our root directory here, npm run develop, and that should boot up our live site for us in a development environment. Scroll. That is not. Okay, hold on. Let me try that again. I kind of got npm run develop. Let's try that again. It's just looking for the place where it is running. Oh, as soon as I start scrolling here, it's looking all weird. What's going on? Weird. Something is choking up here. Not sure what's going on, folks. Oh, it switched me into Node. There we go. Let's try this again. I'm going to log back into where we were in our tutorial part 2. And then we were running npm run develop. Something's already running at that port. Let's just go ahead and run in another. I think that's because it was running behind the scenes. And okay, now I've got, can we scroll? Yes, okay, we're working out. 801. One of the nice things about these tools is that if it sees something that was running on a previous process, you don't have to manually go shut down that other port and override it. It will just do that. But now it looks like we are up and running, and we've got our global style. So I'm guessing if we change this to something else, yeah, we'll see it auto-compile and update. And we did that by just putting this in here, and it would recognize that global style. So it's a pretty easy way to take care of all of this. You see it here. Quickest and most straightforward way. In most cases, this isn't surprising, the best way to add it is with a shared layout component, and there's some docs on that. So let's dig into this a second. So the default starter has this, so it tells you how to boot up a default starter and create a layout.js and a CSS. And I'm not sure, I've heard that the layout stuff may be changing with V2, so I don't know if this will last forever, but basically layout is meant as a wrapper for all your other components to go inside of. Like think of it as a main page template, or maybe even larger than an individual page template, something that a page template would be wrapped in itself, or maybe it is around a page template. And then you could import your styles, so we have a layout. It is hooking into one of the inline styles, which we're going to get into a little bit later, so I won't stress that at this point. But we could basically apply styles at a global level this way. Yeah, so this is going to be our layout. And then when we call our layout, it will be styled that way. Add global styles with CSS and no layout component. Okay, so it shows us an alternative approach to this. I'm curious if it says anything about updating. Some case, a shared layout component is not desirable. You can include a Gatsby umbrella. This approach does not work with... Oh, okay. So that's another thing, is that we're going to want to get to using CSS and JavaScript. Pretty popular technique, worth checking out. So it looks like if we do want to take that approach, then maybe doing this alone isn't going to be enough, which would make sense. CSS are those extracted, but not for... Yeah, layout components. Cool, so this is a little bit of what we just saw in this tutorial. Cool, always nice to check out these Gatsby docs are great. I'm really enjoying learning this stuff through them. Okay. Using component scoped CSS. So we've talked about just the main standard CSS. Now we're going to talk about ways to modularize that. One of these ways is CSS Modules, which is a way of applying specific style sheets to specific parts of or elements that are often broken out into individual files, and then it will add a bunch of extra markup or selector strings. It'll extend your selectors so that that CSS just gets applied to those and not to other things going on. And you've probably seen this in your source code, even if you haven't worked with it, if you've looked around. So it talks about CSS Modules being a little bit safely, and this is cool. Works with Gatsby out of the box. So it is recommended for those new to building Gatsby and React, build a new home page using CSS modules. Okay, first create a new container component. So I'm going to, now we were doing the other stuff, the creation through the command line. I think I'm just going to switch over to creating it in my editor here. Okay, so inside of source, I want to create a components folder. And then a new file called container. Hey, what's up, Paul? Missed you there. Thanks for popping by. Happy work day to you. I was just taking a break to do a live stream too, so good stuff. Okay, so inside of components, we're going to do a container JS. And I'm guessing this is similar to the layout principle we talked about. Let's just go ahead and copy this stuff, although I want to look at this a little bit more closely. Okay, so now we're getting container styles from this, which I don't think we've created yet. And we're exporting a div with a class of container styles.container and then all of the children. And is that not going to be reformatted? Is Prettier not running? Oh, because all that's on one line. I see. All right, I guess we'll just leave it that way. Okay, so this is going to be our container, and now we probably have to set up our modules file. Yeah, so in the same directory, create a CSS file with a similar name. So this is called container.js. The other one's going to be called container.module.css, and then we know, like, hey, this CSS file is going to automatically kind of go with that. We'll put in some details for that. I'll just copy and paste these, some width and centering. And you'll notice that it ends with module.css. This tells Gatsby that this file should be a CSS module. So now we're going to have to probably use that component and import all the styles. Did we import the styles? Yeah. Okay. So we imported them here, so that should be all set up. Now we've got to use them. So we'll come into our source, and it wants us to create a new page called about CSS Modules.js. And by the way, creating all these pages manually is not going to be something that you're doing once you have like a WordPress or something plugged in, but just when we're starting off, or even when we get to using Markdown and plugging that stuff in. So manually creating JavaScript pages for every single site in your Gatsby site isn't totally something you have to do forever, but just as we're learning, let's see, something failed here. Oh, it failed back when it saw that there is no such file. So let's try starting up our server again. Let's check it out. It's probably on 102, or it's back on 8,000. Okay. Cool. So now we've got our about page, and what's going on here? Okay, so we're going to import our React. We're going to import our container that we got from here that we're exporting, and we're not exporting it with a name, but we are calling it container on import. And then we're going to say use this container and pass in the stuff. So the way container is built is it takes any children that are passed in, creates a wrapper, and then wraps those children. I don't know about you all, but I kind of like seeing it like this. Is it going to shorten it? It's going to shorten it. All right. We do what Prettier says these days, right? So cool, we've got this. I wonder if it's already working. Let's see. Now it tells us to just do this, but I want to be a little fun here and see if I could remember how to create a link tag. And I know we did this before, so I'm going to come back to my old example, and I've got to import link from Gatsby. So I'm going to come under React, import link from Gatsby, and then I've got to use it like this. And it's not in this file. I want to go to my index file for my new thing I'm building, for my tutorial index. And let's wrap this stuff up a little bit. I think it's nice as you're doing tutorials. I like to just kind of play around and every once in a while fork off and do my own little thing and play around with it. I think it's a good way to keep learning. So the way this is going to work is it'll take the page slug is going to be built off of whatever we name this file, I believe, by default. And so I could come into my index file and I could paste that here and I could say, learn about CSS modules. Come back to my site. I broke it. Sweet. Link is not defined because I imported it in the wrong file. So let's take this out of our About CSS Modules page and put it back here where we actually need it. Hey, learn about CSS modules. And then I go to my CSS modules page and I've got nothing. So is that correct? I should have something. I have nothing. Okay, let's go back to our tutorial, and our page does not look right. So we did mess up something. Let's go trace down what went wrong. Well, first of all, are we on the right page? Let's just make sure. It tells us to go About CSS Modules. Let's make sure I go there. Oh, now what page was I at before? Now it's working? Huh. That's weird. Let's do one more thing. Let's add a link back again. By the way, y'all saw that, right? It was working, then not. Maybe it just needed to be refreshed. Not sure what was going on there. So let's copy that, put it in. And then let's just go ahead and let's type some stuff by hand. So maybe I got to do it inside the container because we got to still return. You always have to return one element in React, so I don't want to put this outside the container. And I think I just do link to like that. Go home. Yeah, gravy. Cool. Okay, back to styling. So styling a component, we create, now it's going to want us to create some other stuff too. I want to show you something though about styling modules, is that if we inspect this stuff, cool, yeah, this is what I wanted to show you. Okay. So see how the class is container module, and then dash dash container dash dash something unique. Have you seen this before? When you're looking at JavaScript and source code, this is often because they're using container modules, or because they're using CSS modules. And when we do that, this class will be imported and applied here, but it'll be applied uniquely. So it'll tell us that, hey, we're in our container module, and then container specifically, and then a unique reference for it. So that's just to ensure that this CSS, even if there's something else called container, that those don't conflict with each other. And as a system-wide thing, it'll track all of that. Yeah, I believe that it will be if you have two containers, although I think that that is a bad idea in general with this approach. I'm not super knowledgeable on CSS modules and best practices. So let's just keep on learning together here. We're going to create another file, pages about CSS modules, paste the following into a new file. Okay, so it looks like we're going to do some styling just for that one. So it wants a style sheet in there, which I got to say is kind of weird to me. Like CSS everywhere, really? It's cool. It's cool. I can handle it. You know, just follow what the cool kids tell you to do with programming, and can't go wrong there. Just keep it up. Okay, so we created that file, and now we're going to create some styles. And by create, I mean copy. So again, the same naming convention. This is following the slug, and then here in this file, we're probably going to end up importing it. So now we've got to import it here by doing this. I want to try typing some of this just because I feel you pick it up a little bit better. Import, let's put this after Gatsby. Import styles from about, that can't be right, should find it. In the right place, yep. Okay, let's see. CSS modules dot mod. Not CSS. Usually when I'm typing it, finds that manually. Okay, it is not finding it. Warning styles is defined but never used. Okay, maybe that's fine. Yeah, because we just haven't used this yet. And then it's just telling us to log those styles. Where? Just like right here. Okay, cool. Yeah, so see how it has the module telling us what modules it's in, and then that it is the specific class, and then you could see it's got this unique rep on it. Which is crazy if you want to style on top of other people's styles, but you know, is a nice system for modularizing everything. Modularizing? This is just kind of what we were talking about. There's never any question what CSS is being used. Now it wants to create a new user under create a new user component inline in the about page. Okay, so this is not common that we'd come into a JavaScript file already and then just create a random component right there. Usually we'd put this in our own components folder. I kind of want to, but let's follow the instructions. Okay, so const user is equal to props, and then we're going to return a div with a class name. Okay, this stuff I'm not gonna type. Sorry, y'all. Let's just paste that in there and check out what we've got here. We've got the styles.user, styles.avatar. So notice when we say class name, we're not going to refer to just avatar how we normally would. We're going to say styles avatar, and that'll let the system do what it needs to do. And then props username, so we're going to be passing some stuff into this user, I'm guessing. So here we go. We've got two users then we could pass in. And we're going into our container. Jane Doe, Bob Smith. Let's see who we've got. Come in, test this out. Hi, Jane. Hi, Bob. Cool. Nice. Styled. So these are just right here. We could change any of them. It's got the flex align. I like this. This is pretty cool. Okay, so that is CSS modules. And our finished page should look like that. Okay, now we've got a whole other topic that isn't in this, but I want to do a little spin-off and talk about this for a little bit in the separate tutorial, because now we get to CSS in JavaScript. And our modular stuff it's a little bit like CSS in JavaScript because we're bringing our CSS files rather than at a global level down to and being matched with our individual components. But we could take that a step further and pull our CSS out of a separate file, a separate CSS file, and write our CSS directly in our JavaScript. And thanks to transpiling nowadays, which is rewriting of our code, it could easily, when we compile our code, it could easily take some CSS inside of our JavaScript, port it out into other CSS, and do extra modular and keeping it close and bound and scoped and all of that. So let's go ahead, set time check, cool. Let's go ahead and jump into that a little bit because I think the rest of it, yeah, is just Gatsby plugins and layout. So today we could just focus on styling. Cool, CSS is most generated pattern where, okay, so this is pointing to React's documentation on CSS-in-JS, and nothing really happens by default, I believe. You have to use a library, well, you could do CSS in JavaScript by default in JavaScript, but there are several libraries that most folks are using when they're taking this approach, because otherwise it amounts to a lot of inline styling that is redundant, so there are some better patterns. And I believe, yeah, so there's two in particular that Gatsby is already wired up to work with. One is Glamour, which I have not worked with so much. I'm trying to see if I could find the actual site for it. Yep. So pretty popular one, I think. I'm not as familiar with it. It is, Glamour is not actively, oh yeah, Emotion, that's why I couldn't find it. Because this is the site I was looking for. Okay. Emotion is a pretty cool way to basically write, let's zoom in on this a bit. Actually, let's just pump it up. To write our CSS like this right inside of a class name. And then you could have components that have all their styling right there. And I know this might seem crazy if you haven't done this before, but once you get into the flow, it's pretty cool. The one I'm a bit more familiar with, so I want to focus on that tutorial in particular, is not Glamour, but styled components. And I don't think you could go wrong with either one of these, but I think maybe of the two, and I might be wrong, styled components is, I don't know if the more popular one, but I think has been around a little bit longer. Again, I'm not sure. Just the one I'm more familiar with, so we're going to go with that one. In this guide, you'll learn about setting this up. Lets you use actual CSS inside your components. And if you're asking, like, why on heck would we do that? The idea is that you go to one place to edit the markup, the behavior, and the styles for a UI piece in your app, and that does have its benefits. All right, one of the most important they solve is name collisions also, so we don't have to worry about classes as much because we will just style a component whenever we use it. It will have those styles. We could also have global ones. There are patterns for that, but the CSS selectors are scoped automatically. Live namespaces shows how this is done. Okay, oh, there's a video on it from Egghead. Big fan of Egghead. If you haven't checked them out, one of the top places for learning JavaScript, and they've got some styled component videos from Artem. Oh, excited. He's going to be speaking at ReactConf in Amsterdam. I'm going to be there in a couple weeks next month. Very excited for that. Okay, so we got to get a new tutorial. Cool. Are we getting comfy with the command line yet? Let's cd back out of this directory. So now I'm here in my live stream. I'll close this up, and so we're going to create a new one. Copy this all. Wait, hold on. Let's see. First, open a new window and do this. Gatsby new hello world. Okay, so that'll get us the hello world part. Now we need to install dependencies. So we'll need Gatsby plugin style components. And the way Gatsby works, and we'll learn this soon, is that for most libraries that you want to join with it, you want a plugin so that it can plug into Gatsby's internal system so that while it's compiling, it can run everything at the right time in the proper order for most efficiency. We don't always just import everything how we would normally. We also want that plugin. And then we've got to get the styled components library, which is what we really want. And then, or it's what's going to be doing the actual CSS stuff for us. And then we've got our Babel plugin so that we know that it will be transpiled down and taken from JavaScript ultimately into CSS at the end. All right, so I'm going to copy this now. And well, first I got to cd into styled components. Looks like I can't get that anymore further down. Okay, so now I'll be in this one, and I need to run npm install these three different things. So while that's running, the next thing up is to go to our Gatsby config file, which it doesn't look like we have by default. So I will just go ahead and create that. Gatsby config.js. And we need to tell it that we are using this plugin. That's basically it. So this is all the configuration we need. Everything else will just kind of run automatically and work as it would in any other React site. So now we're going to come down, clear this out, and run npm run develop to boot up our server. We already kind of have some stuff running. Let me close some of this stuff down here. And we got our new tutorial. Okay. Run npm run develop. I think we could just do Gatsby develop. These tutorials seem to switch between npm run develop, and I think just Gatsby develop will work too. Okay, so now it's running. Let's go ahead and check it out. Hello world. Not styled yet. Let's take care of that. So now we want to create a sample styled components page at pages.index. So I think we already have a pages.index, but we want to do a styled one. So let's import styled. Okay. So import styled from styled components. It'll find it automatically. And then the way this works, I don't know if we're going to explain this. This has a whole bunch of, this is just everything at once. So let me break this down a little bit. Let me jump ahead and see what it is that they're doing and see how we could simplify it. Okay, let's start here. So I'm going to copy some code over. Yeah, let's start, well, you know what, let's do the div, let's do the container one first. Okay. How do we want to do this? Yeah. Okay. I think I got this. We're going to kind of free lib from here because it's not much of a tutorial after that. It just kind of adds it and it's running. Okay, so the way styled components work is rather than call div directly, and now in React with a div, we can we can add styles. So I think it's like style and then background, color. Let's do yellow. Okay, so we could do styles like that, inline. Another way we could do this, and this is the default inline React styles, nothing special about that. The other thing we could do is the way the styled components work, and I just want to peek at the example again because, yeah, we create a component named style.whatever. Okay. So what we do is we create a new component on the fly. So we're going to call this one a container, and it's basically this will replace our div. So we'll do that in a second, but what we say is this is going to be equal to a styled.div. So what that means is when we create container, that is going to be a normal div plus whatever styles we add to it. Okay, so the way this works is any HTML tag, you can make it H2, whatever it is, you're going to create a custom component instead of using that one, right? So this is going to be a div. And then the syntax is a little funky. We don't do equal or anything. We just do backticks. And then inside of that backtick, you could write any valid CSS, which is pretty cool. So let's just do the same thing we were doing before. Now you can't do like that. I believe it is all camel case. No, it is like that. That's right. Straight up CSS. So you saw before when we did the styles that way, you had to write it in the JavaScript syntax, like background color for the prop, right? But now we don't have to do that. We could just write literal CSS. So background color, yellow. Let's double check that I'm right there. I think that is right. Okay, and now all we have to do is replace our div here with our container that we just created. So this container is literally just a div with these styles. It's pretty cool. We created on the fly. This right here is what takes care of all of our scoping for us. And then we could even export these. So a lot of times you'll see these things saved in other files, and you could just import anytime you want to use your header or whatever it is, or a container that is styled a certain way. Like I'm sure that their container, let's come over and copy their styles here. We'll kind of jump back into this tutorial. Wow, I love Prettier. It even knows that that's inline CSS. And cool, so now we've got that. Let's come in and code the rest of it. So next we've got something called a user wrapper. And that is going to be flex align item center, the last item, no padding or no margin on the bottom. We've got an avatar element. And so anywhere in our app where we would normally have a div with a class of user wrapper, now we have a component called user wrapper. And anytime we'd have an image with a class or an ID of avatar, now we just have a component called avatar. Last one, instead of having a div with a class of description, we just have a description one. Pretty cool, huh? And it goes on and on. We've got username and excerpt as well. And now we could copy this last bit. Let me just copy this whole thing. Oh, that's a whole user component. Did we already create a user component? Nope. Yeah, so honestly, y'all, this is not how it would look in production. We would likely have all of these as different. Let's just copy the user. And oh, we did this before. That's why this is feeling familiar. User wrapper, container, We'll just copy their whole container. Export default. Is that working? Let's check it out. Yeah, cool. I like this. Good examples, y'all. So this is how it works. Basically, instead of having div class name equals container and having a separate JavaScript file, we would have just this component called container. Now, as I mentioned, most of these would probably end up going in our, like, definitely this user one would end up going in its own component folder. So inside of my source, inside of source here, if I were doing this, I would probably create a new folder for components and then put all those components in. Now, I don't know, maybe there is a Gatsby convention, like put a bunch of your styled components in the same page if you're only going to use them in that page, because really there's no point in breaking a component out into a separate folder until you need it more than once, right? I mean, in general, it's nice just if you're planning ahead. But maybe if you have something that's only used on that one page, you can create them in line. We do have the flexibility to do all of that. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to get into today, because the next section of this stuff is going to get into Gatsby plugins and the layout and all of that. And I want to do a little research and find out about if there was something that was changing with layout and all of that. But either way, yeah, this is going to be pretty cool. We'll get into that next time. Hope you're finding this fun and interesting, just kind of walking through and learning Gatsby as we go here. Again, please check out the course I'm working over at javascriptforwp.com, as well as a bunch of my other courses on JavaScript and WordPress related stuff. My React book just came out today, so you'll be able to pick that up pretty soon. We're just making some final edits to the print version. I got it right here. And a few formatting issues we're having, so we'll get that fixed up right away. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and hope you enjoyed. Take care. Until next time.